Just watching the time. I know we're close. We're good? All right, we are 10 a.m. We'll go ahead. Not an official meeting, but we're doing a workshop this morning. So if someone would like to make a motion to not use Robert's rules, to suspend Robert's rules, because we're not officially conducting a meeting, so that we can just talk openly about that. If somebody would like to make a motion.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Perfect. Great, Eric. You would like to start us out and
Yeah.
see what we can get through today.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Planning and Zoning Commission. So thank you. And who we have online is our consultant, Connie Brooks. And then we have Commissioner Toman also here. I probably don't want to put Mary on the spot, but kind of give background to Ms. Connie Brooks. I'm not sure if you're aware of her resume, but it's pretty impressive. But I'd like Mary to kind of go over it. So.
Well, Connie, I can't read your resume, but I can tell you she tried to retire. She's been writing comments for our coalition of local governments for almost 20 years, defending scientifically credible, legally defensible comments on all federal plans and projects that have come through Southwest Wyoming. Basically, that coalition covers 17 million acres of Southwest Wyoming and 4 counties and commissions and conservation districts. So maybe she can give you a little introduction as to why it is so important that we have a plan and how important it is when she's commenting for us to have these plans. We pulled her out of retirement because after a year being a commissioner, I kept quizzing Wally and Commissioner Johnson and Mark Clyde. Do we have a plan in place? Do we have a plan in place? Well, yeah, there's something there. And I really pinned him down. There was nothing there except the letters and phone calls we've made. And that's just not gonna, that's not going to defend our position, but they have, even Wally and Mark have agreed that this is something that we need to get done. And so I'm so thankful that Connie took this project on at high speed because we found out there was this federal money that we could get through the governor's office. Federal, it's not federal money, it's the legislature apportions the federal Land Policy Act money, not FLIPMA, but I can't even think of the word. Federal Natural Resource Policy Account money. It's like a grant to us. So they will cover the cost of the legal counsel that we will be having working with us. So Connie, before I say something incorrect here, I'm going to let you take it away as far as what you've been doing, why this is so important.
Okay, good morning. I've been practicing law about 44 years, started work with an Alaska law firm on Alaska wilderness issues. Jimmy Carter was president. The Cold War was still alive and well. And the controversies that occurred in Alaska occur in every Western state. After I left DC after 5 years, I went to work for Mountain States Legal Foundation. I've been doing federal court litigation, federal administrative litigation, really since, mid-1978. And yes, I am in semi-retirement. I'm older than I might look. That's just the hair color. And I've just seen a lot of these issues and have worked with land use plans, worked with National Forest spotted owl planning, forest plans in general, wilderness issues, RS 2477, livestock grazing, oil and gas leasing, and even mining and federal withdrawals and land classification. So these are all the issues that Sweetwater County faces. And the objective really with the plan and what I'm going to talk about today is to articulate, at least in a very general policy sense, what the county would like to see in the federal plans. And just to kind of explain what I mean, back in the mid-1970s, Congress gave the county and state a bigger role in land use planning and directed BLM to make their plans consistent to the greatest extent, consistent with federal law and practicality with a county plan. So it flipped the relationship. And instead of the government saying, this is how we're going to manage the lands and you, the county, will live with it, it forced the BLM, Bureau of Land Management, and to a limited extent, the Forest Service, to go to the counties and say, where's your plan? What do you want to see in our plan? And it's been a long time coming. It has not been an easy change. Yes, I know 50 years have gone by. But we're making progress, and the agencies do at least pretend to listen. And it's important for the county plan to have an articulated policy on the major issues. So as we talk through the plan today, I started pretty much with the format that we see in the Bureau of Land Management plan, the public land plan, which of course is the Rock Springs field office for Sweetwater County. And it's not dissimilar from what the Forest Service follows for those plans. So we kind of started out with that format just because it'll be easy for the county people writing comments and deciding what they want to do when looking at the public land plans, and vice versa, or any other project that's going to come up in the same format. So probably not as clear as it could be, but I think it may become clearer as we go through the plan a little further. So Eric, how do we want to start this?
Well, so what I thought we could do is go section by section, and just like Connie stated, that this gives us the opportunity when we do get, whether it's a resource management plan or a permit that's going through them or something to comment on from the federal government, it gives us a document to be able to comment back. Mark and Commissioner Johnson were very well versed in public lands and dealt with it all the time. Someone like myself who doesn't deal with public lands on a day-to-day basis, get pulled in other areas. This gives me a document to be able to go to and say, okay, this is Sweetwater County's position on this. So I'm going to throw this out to the, because we're in a workshop. This is not super formal here. How you would like me to do this, because we can go section by section, is what I thought we could do. I could read through it, and then you could stop me and say, Eric, okay, I want to talk about this. This is my issue with it, my comment. I like it worded this way. What are your thoughts on that?
Does the county supersede the government, the federal government then? Is that, Connie, is that what I was understanding?
I'm not sure I can hear.
Oh,
can you speak
I'm
more
sorry.
into-
Yeah. Does the county supersede the federal government on the land issues then? Since they
Oh, we
reverse the
only
roles?
wish. No. The federal government would always be under the supremacy clause. They'll claim that they're the ones that get to decide ultimately what happens. But they do have to make an effort to show that they tried to make it consistent. And then two, they need to be able to show any efforts or any of the rationale not to accept the county plan. And, historically, I have to say, the government has tended to ignore that. But as time goes on, and as as Mary knows, after having worked with the coalition for well over 15, 16 years, just getting to know the agency, they know her, they listen to her. They know that they have to at least take this into account. So it's a persuasive document as much as anything. And I also want to be really clear that this is just the starting point. But there'll be a lot of flexibility for the county on individual projects, individual decisions to say, yes, this is what we say, but in this specific case, we're going to make these recommendations. So you're not binding the county to any particular posture in terms of long-term, up or down on a wind farm, for example.
So maybe to answer your question, Casey. So last year they passed legislation in the legislature on master plans, on land use plans. And the issue was there was a certain specific county, I won't mention, that was not, it was not Sweetwater County, that was regulating with a master plan. And the issue is you need to regulate with your zoning regulation. And so that was the issue that was out there. So they passed legislation that actually states that you can't regulate by a plan. You have to regulate by a regulation or an ordinance if it was in a city. So that's what this is. This is a guiding document, a plan. This is our position, just like Connie stated. This is how we feel about this. And it's a living document that we can always change. And, projects vary. That's why when we get into the renewable section, it says, yes, we, support renewable energy, but it has to be according to county zoning. And that's what a plan is. A comprehensive plan says, hey, this is our wish. So here's an example. We believe in the separation of incompatible land uses. That's a statement in our comprehensive plan. Okay, well, you don't regulate by that, but you do adopt a zoning resolution that says, okay, how do we do that? We do it by zoning. So we put I-2 over here, heavy industrial, and then we put residential far away from it. So do you see what I mean? This is the plan. This is the goal that we would like to have, but then you regulate with your ordinance or your regulations. So I don't know if that helps or not, but that is what the legislature was concerned with last year was, oh, well, this was in your city master plan. And they were saying we didn't pass a certain permit. It was a conditional use based on the master plan. It needed to be. So what they're saying is, that's fine. Those are your goals and objectives, but where does it say it in your zoning ordinance? Yeah. So anyway. Sure.
It's also important because all the federal agencies have to do an MOU with the local governments. And so as elected officials, we sit in their planning meetings before they go public to provide local input. And Connie, you can weigh in on this, but I've done this since Jack Morrow Hills. We had before the plans went public, pre-decisional meetings where we talked and gave input to the agency, sitting around the table with the other elected officials and their IT, or not IT, but their technical team from the BLM saying, no, we don't think this is right. We think this is right. Informing the feds as to why we think this is important. You're going to kill our economy if you stop all oil and gas leasing or whatever it is. So it's very important for us as elected officials too. When we sit in the meetings, we provide the input through that coalition to Connie, who in turn writes those legally defensible, scientifically credible comments. And sometimes that coalition, we even hire biologists on the sage grouse, for example, or we do whatever research we need to do so Connie can make the appropriate comments, but it's important for us to be at the table. So we are feeding that input in as the law is allowing before the comments go public. So we have that free exchange of ideas. And I can't tell you how many thousands of hours I've been in those meetings. I mean, because the Rollins RMP cuts into Sweetwater County. The Lander RMP cuts into Sweetwater County. Each of those represent more than millions of dollars of federal cooperators helping write those plans against us forming this coalition so we could afford to respond to those plans through our legal team. Hundreds of hours in meetings. Kemmer RMP cuts in through Granger and cuts into Sweetwater County. Ashley National Forest, the Flaming Gorge Recreation Area cuts into Sweetwater County. The BOR, the Bureau of Rec, and what happens to all that land is still owned by the BOR outside of Seaskiddy area, almost to Farson. That's a public land issue for us. What happens with the Bureau of Rec and what they do with their projects, and Seaskiddy National Wildlife Refuge, we comment on their plans. So just to give you a flavor of how important it is that we have the local voice in these plans and stand up and fight for what we want. Connie, does that cover that?
Yes, it does.
Hence the plan that we currently do not have.
That we need, yes.
Correct. We do not have it. That's true. That's true. And there are other counties that have Sublette County has a federal land use plan that they actually updated. just recently, so. Oh, yeah, yep. She can't hear you. Yes.
Honey, I'm saying the county, we kind of relied on the conservation plan, which you helped us develop, and it's been through 3 updates, I believe. As laws change, that's why you saw the red in here. They update their plan because by state law, the conservation district has to make theirs also a 5-year plan, not just a policy statement. So Connie, we put her through the paces to make her boil this one down to be quicker and easier, so it's not quite so overwhelming, I guess. Yeah.
Well, and also the county has a different role. And so a lot of the conservation district plan was focused on studies and funding studies and actual land management, whereas this is focused on the authority of the county.
Okay, so, and then see how Connie and Commissioner Toman feel about this. Instead of reading word for word, because this is a workshop, what I thought we could focus on today, because we'll make sure we get this document to you well in advance of the April meeting. And if we need to hold another workshop, we can schedule that. That's no problem. But my thing I'd like to today is a focus on the objectives and policies sections. As you go through the document, there's overviews, there's a description of what the plan organization and maintenance is. There's just an introduction also to it. Not saying those aren't important. Those are important to have in there to give context, but how would the Planning and Zoning Commission feel about focusing today on, and in the workshops, on the objectives? And Connie, does that sound like a good plan?
It works for me.
I think that's a good idea.
You guys? Okay.
You're a
Okay.
brave group. Thank you, though. Let me say- We were trying to think of a group that we could coordinate with, and you were the logical group.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so we're extending our monitor instead of mirroring it. Oh, okay. So, that's fine. So, screen.
Yeah, this will definitely be a lot to take in one day.
Well, and-
I know, I'm like, I don't know what we can get.
Well, and
done
be
in a
sure to
day.
call me if you have questions, if I could help you with some of the questions, because then I can communicate with Connie
Basically,
if we need another workshop even, to vet some of this stuff. It is a huge lift to ask you to take.
Well, thank you so much, because this is very important. for
You
the
seem to
county.
be the logical group to take it before it went to the commission and it went public.
Is there any way we can get the federal government out of it completely?
We wouldn't have to have this meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so the first section that we're going to go over today, and then as far as a hard cutoff, what do we want to do? Do we want to do 12? I think I know when we went to the Unified Development Code, which was never adopted, they were doing 7 to 8 hour, and I don't think you guys are up for it. I'm not up for that. You want to do a hard cutoff at 12? Okay, all right. Let's see, and then see where we're at, and then,
We have to do another meeting, Garrick. I think I speak for myself. I know we
Oh,
can work it in.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
okay, that sounds great. That sounds great. Appreciate that.
As long as Connie and Mary could do it, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
That's my job, right?
You hear that, Commissioner? Okay, so the first section, if you go to page, let's see, it's the land use policy.
8.2.
Is that what you got?
On the
8.2,
bottom, yeah.
Okay, so this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start reading through these and then just stop me, anybody.
Okay.
Commissioner Toman, that includes you, Connie, if there's something in there, or myself if I want to stop, right? If I see something, just because of the short time. So the Sweetwater County discourages or will oppose federal land use restrictions or special designations that eliminate multiple uses and constrain economic growth and activity.
Here's one for you. Are we changing words or adding words or anything like that to this?
We
Yeah,
can,
so
we
yeah.
can absolutely do that. That's what I work, yep.
Just one of my, maybe it's a personal thing, but I would go, Sweetwater County discourages or will vigorously oppose, just little nuances of text,
Oh, Connie, I love that. We had to make her water it down so we didn't freak everyone out.
I don't water. But I mean, that as a county, and that's, if there's something against it. We need to vigorously oppose what they're doing. We might not win, but we need to
Okay.
throw our hat in them. Just an idea. I don't know.
How does, so what we can do today too, we're not voting, right?
No,
So
no.
but what helps us though, so that we don't get into something like at the next
Suggestion,
meeting where,
yeah.
where
Changing words and.
Mr. Richards is
arguing
okay
over
with that,
words.
but then 4 or against, and then we don't pass something.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna ask, how's everybody else?
So, Eric,
Oh.
just if I could.
Go ahead.
So just a comment on that. You know, the danger is that, for example, when you talk about Flaming Gorge, the Ashley, sort of a past position has been, we don't want you doing anything in that area at all. We don't want any oil. We don't want any wind farms. We don't want any excuses. That's an area we don't want touched. And so when you put on there, you know, vigorously, you just have to remember that there have been different positions taken in different
little
areas within
individual
Sweetwater
specifics, yeah.
County. You know, the wind farms is an example, I think, that Connie identifies that different people had different positions on. And, you know, Carbon County's loving their wind farms because it's keeping them going.
Well, it's in there. I'm just like opposing a federal thing, not.
Yeah.
So the federal government wants to come in and lock out a piece of ground and say, we decided we don't want to let you people go down BLM land anymore. We need to fight with tooth and nail about stuff, whether we win or not, you know, just, that was my brain. I was like, you know, it might not be the best. Oppose works, but vigorously was like, you know, if something's not to our liking, we need to fight it. You know, that's just my brain.
Well, if I could just butt in right now, it seems to me that I need to be a little more specific there
Yeah.
and distinguish between public lands and the specific reservations like Flaming Gorge NRA, which is
Right.
a reserved area for specific purposes, both by statute and policy. Would that clarify?
Yeah, and I'm just looking as the general, because I mean, this is still a general thing. This is our objective to, just from my view, you know, so I'm just, if we're going to oppose something, we need to vigorously oppose it. And if we're not going to oppose it, then, you know, it's just a word. It's not a big deal.
No, but
know.
I'll refine the statement to make it clear that this doesn't change the county's policies for the
Right.
NRA, for example.
Right, yeah, I'm not changing policy. I'm just saying
Yeah.
if they do something, we don't like it, we need to fight. You know, that's my view of reading that little text. you know,
Okay.
So we're gonna fight it. You know,
And we will in the appendix include any resolutions we can find on roads, on
Yeah.
Biden's 30 by 30, on the Flaming Gorge Recreation Area, on the wilderness study areas. Any resolutions that the county has, we'll put them in the appendix that former commissioners have adopted these resolutions.
Any other comments on that one? No, we'll move to the next.
I need 12 workshops. No, I'm just.
So we,
I did need to start off like with a bang, you know?
and just so you know, we'll get into some other statements when kind of some of the things that you're hitting on. So, okay, so Sweetwater County supports the sale or transfer of federal lands that are isolated, difficult to manage, or the sale will facilitate survey errors, as well as cases when disposal meets the important public objective of community expansion or economic development, or when the disposal would serve the public interest. Sweetwater County strongly supports no net loss of the private lands within the county. No net loss shall be measured in acreage and in fair market value. Are there any questions on that one? No? Okay. Sweetwater County should be consulted prior to any state or federal land acquisition or disposal actions, particularly when the acquisition will adversely affect the county tax base. Sweetwater County supports agency action to make federal land available for lease or transfer under the Recreation and Purpose Act of 1954 as amended. The resource management plans should identify suitable lands in a process so a qualified entity can submit an application. Mark, we've dealt with a lot with that with the rec department.
Yep.
Sweetwater County is committed to coordination and communication with the various state, tribal, and local land management authorities to ensure that the county policies are reflected in federal land management. Sweetwater County will oppose federal land management policies and standards that interfere with the property rights of any private landowner to enjoy and engage in uses and activities on an individual's property consistent with controlling county zoning. I think we can all,
Mhm.
for sure.
That my vigorously might be better in there.
Okay, now the next one I actually have a question on, and I'm going to refer to our attorney on this one, but I was a little bit concerned with the next statement, but Sweetwater County believes that a private landowner or a guest or client of a private landowner is entitled to exercise the right of motorized access to the private landowner's property consistent with past uses of the private property. I understand where we're going with this, but John, maybe you can.
So yeah, obviously there's a lot of concerns there. First is that there are zoning requirements for access and for creating access. This statement could be interpreted as meaning you can drive onto your property where you want, how you want, not just once, but continuously. It also lends itself to an interpretation that roads that weren't established, I can't remember the date, Eric, you might remember the date, but if they weren't established by a certain date,
Yeah.
that you had to officially establish it.
2477.
And so this almost suggests that they're reestablishing prior roads in some fashion. So there's multiple contradictions in there. I don't know that a lot is, I think the paragraph above, in my mind, sort of encompasses what is trying to be accomplished by that paragraph. So I don't know that you need both of those paragraphs. And there's certainly some value to simply removing that paragraph so there's not misinterpretation.
Well, I can give you an example. County Attorney Aaron Mosby's family had to fight like crazy because all of a sudden the BLM decided that they didn't want his family to drive across BLM to get to his ranch. And Connie, maybe you could elaborate on that and make sure that we
Well,
cover that issue.
And I wasn't actually familiar with the Aramas problem, but what I have seen, and the only reason I put that in, is that there's circumstances in which a landowner will have an established right to use a road. But if they start allowing their family members or someone else, like an employee, to use the road, the Bureau of Land Management may well say, no, the right of way really only lets you use it for this particular purpose. We're not going to let your employees use the road. Or we're going to have to write another environmental assessment and issue another right of way. And that's what I was trying to get at there. But I'm not saying you're not legitimately concerned. I didn't intend that this paragraph, for example, permit the creation of new roads or somehow change what's considered a road as of the date of this plan, for example. It was just intended to really address some of the regulatory issues with rights of way when you're dealing with the Bureau of Land Management.
So Eric,
Think of
Sorry
like,
about
oh,
that.
sorry, like the Red Desert, I mean, that
Yes.
has so much property out there that has no legal access can somebody interpret this of now that we have a road and I have access and not go, I mean, I instantly think of the Red Desert and
It
the
said
mess out there.
Past uses though.
So Eric, maybe in the paragraph 2.2.7, it could identify to enjoy and engage in uses, activities,
and
And
access.
access it, correct.
Yeah. Connie, would that cover it?
Yes, it would. As I said, I was getting, paragraph 22.8 probably was more micromanagement. And I was just, again, visualizing cases that somehow, sometimes cross my desk.
So it,
And I was looking at the federal government's perspective, and
Sure.
you're obviously providing the county perspective, which is, wait a minute. We can't sort of, we don't want this to be misinterpreted, and you've given me two radically different interpretations than I had. So this is good.
So we can eliminate
Yes,
2.8.
it's gone.
Now we'll have County Attorney Aaron Mosby look at that since he is intimately familiar with it.
okay, excellent. Okay, 2.2.9, whoops. Sweetwater County believes that the BLM and United States Forest Service planning documents should be consistent with the county plan to the maximum extent possible under federal law. Sweetwater County asks the Forest Service and the BLM plans incorporate the county's plan to meet the following policies. Achieve and maintain in perpetuity a high-level annual or regular periodic output of agriculture, mineral, water, fish, and wildlife, and various other resources from federal lands. Manage for the primary uses of recreation, wildlife, mineral development, grazing, timber, and rights-of-way on public lands. Support current transportation, mineral, and grazing privileges in the subject lands at the highest reasonably sustainable levels.
So that says we're not going to rape the land. It's sustainable.
Yeah. Produce and maintain the desired vegetation as defined by the site's capabilities for watersheds, timber, fiber, livestock forage, wildlife forage, and minerals that are necessary to meet present needs and future economic growth and community expansion in the county without permanent impairment of the productivity of the land. Meet the needs of wildlife while balancing the respective forage needs of wildlife and domestic livestock. Protect against adverse effects to historic properties. Provide for the protection of existing water rights and the development of future water rights. The county opposes the use of buffer zones beyond the scope and boundaries of the wilderness designations. Lands should only be meant. So what we're talking about here, and I'm actually familiar with this situation, was Adobe Town. And the WSA identified by the Bureau of Land Management is a specific size. And what was happening is we had some groups that were trying to expand that. And then that would limit oil and gas leasing. Do I have that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Tillman?
It
Yeah.
would limit access too, even though it's a wilderness study area. It puts limits on it, even though it's not officially a wilderness area.
Oh, wow.
And we have a resolution on file
We do.
asking Congress to release the wilderness study areas that did not meet the proper criteria to qualify as a wilderness area. The BLM was keeping them on the list, but until Congress releases them, and they never have, they still are treated almost like a wilderness. So Connie, you can talk to that better maybe.
No, that's pretty much the way it is. The statute provided that once an area was identified as a wilderness study area and passed from the initial phase of inventory into study, it would be permanently managed as a study area until Congress released it. Now, it was anticipated that Congress would act within, 3 or 4 years of 1992. And I think it's pretty obvious that that has long since come and gone. And we have a legacy, meaning nationally, but particularly in Wyoming, a legacy of wilderness study areas that are still in effect and have to be managed so as not to impair their suitability to be designated as wilderness. And that affects view sheds, it affects access, it affects livestock grazing, and it certainly affects any kind of mineral development because that's prohibited.
Is there any way you could put a time frame on this so they could move it up? I mean, actually get it back to where it's.
Well, it
the
will take,
intent of
actually,
the
at this point, it's an act of Congress, and there was a big push, I want to say, in the first 10 years of this century to ask Congress to go ahead and start releasing the areas that everyone knew shouldn't have been in part of the study and should be released.
Commissioner
And-
Johnson and that commission prepared a letter and a resolution that outlines the ones that would have qualified, and they asked Congress, they did send it to our Congress people, but it never got through Congress to actually release them. But we have identified at that time those 13 wilderness study areas, which 2 or 3 might have qualified to be approved. The rest should have been released. So we have that, we'll put in the appendix that will clarify the status of our 13.
Okay.
We have the most of anybody in the state.
We do.
Yeah.
So it's lands only managed by wilderness areas when they have been designated by Congress. The areas designated as wilderness study areas should be managed in accordance with FLPMA, which is the Federal Land Policy Management Act, so as to not impair wilderness characteristics while respecting valid existing rights. WSAs, wilderness study areas, not recommended for wilderness, should be released. There you go, to the full range of multiple uses.
And then Connie, just insert see resolution, blah, blah, and we'll put that.
Yeah,
right there.
I will add the resolution there.
Right,
I had forgotten about that one.
yeah.
Sweetwater County believes that the objectives of special designations can be met by well-planned and managed development of natural resources. For this reason, special designations established in a plan need to be based on identified need and supported by verifiable scientific data available to the public. The special designation must show the protection cannot be provided by other means and that the area in question is truly unique compared to other lands. The area classified shall be the smallest area necessary. Sweetwater County believes the BLM use of visual resource management, VRMs, class 1 or 2 rating, which is a method to protect visual resources, is not compatible with county policies, except for designated wildernesses and WSAs. Other special cases may exist where such a rating is appropriate if thoroughly vetted by the county and limited to a unique site, which is narrowly tailored where existing rights are fully protected. Any questions on visual, on what a
Well, Little
VRM
Mountain's
is?
an area. Wally didn't want any oil and gas leases down there that were in view of anybody running up and down Little Mountain. But there were some existing rights in there, but the BLM in this new plan probably will come out trying to protect that view shed as you're driving up and down Little Mountain, that you're not going to see a lot of things, even though they may be going on.
That makes
And if I could also add, one of the things that we saw, especially in the Kemmerer plan, but also in the Pinedale Field Office plans, was that BLM used the inventory to assign visual resource management classifications, even though their own policies say, do the inventory and then look at what you're actually using this land for. Say, for example, if you've got an inventory that would say, oh, gee, this is really scenic, but it's right on top of Pinedale Anticline, you would substantially change your visual resource classification. Well, BLM didn't do that. And that was something that was kind of a burr under my own personal saddle because they weren't following their own policy. And I'm concerned that we would see that in Rock Springs. And you have such wide vistas that if you put even a visual resource management class 2 to protect a historic trail, but you stretch that out by 10 miles, you're sterilizing an awful lot of country. And we've seen the application of a visual resource management class 2 that actually prohibited a water trough for sheep because it wasn't consistent with what was historically there when the pioneers first traveled. I want to say that would have been the cutoff, the Sublette cutoff, but you get the picture. And so visual resource management is highly technical, but has significant consequences.
Is there any way you could put in there? Because for instance, driving from Fort Collins down to Denver just recently, they have, they're putting barriers up around the drilling rig. There's a drilling rig right off of I-25 there. But seriously, it's 50 feet to 100 feet tall all the way around the whole site. So you're restricting these visual areas is there any way you could put language in there, to maybe mitigate that with a barrier of some type so you don't see it?
Well, BLM doesn't permit that because that would still be something different. They measure against change, but the barriers are an excellent noise limitation. And I think that's why they're doing it there, is that whole stretch is so aggressively residential now
Yeah.
that even when you see open field, it's actually zoned for a subdivision. And but yeah, I think screening should be a mitigation. So maybe I'll suggest mitigation. Because screening would reduce the level of contrast. But again, what we've been dealing with are purists that really want the Wyoming public lands to look like they did in 1872.
Well, you're saying they don't even want a water trough. So,
Yeah.
And that was an extreme case, but it was in fact, a denial.
yeah.
That was Sean Sims, Mary.
Oh,
And of course, the irony is that Kemmer allowed the wind farms on private land, but wouldn't let them put a sheep trough within sight of a public land section.
Jesus.
That makes sense.
well, and the whole Oregon Trail, because you can see from Pilot B, you can see 100 miles every direction.
Right.
So that
Yeah,
makes it really a problem.
That's
for
the
them.
challenge. That is very much the challenge.
Wow.
But it's just holding their feet to the fire. So they have to at least follow their own rules and
Yeah.
not be just deciding because someone in the office decides that, no, you can't have anything for 100 miles on either side of the Oregon Trail, when there are certain places you could have it. We had a cow trough, well, sheep trough too, in the Lombard allotment on the east side of the Green River below Fontenelle. And that one got snagged up on the cultural issues. They moved that trough 5 times. We made 5 trips out in the desert. And the hilarious part was they put it behind this one little hill off of this oil company road where you couldn't see it, which was the original site we'd asked for.
Wow.
So that's the kind of rigmarole that you get involved in. It's just, you got to hold them to what's legal and not just let them bully you.
Okay. All right, so that's it for the land use policy. Then we're on to the agricultural section. So we're going to move past the overview and go to the objectives and policies on 3.2. The county recognizes that agriculture is an important component of the county economy, custom, and culture. Seawater County therefore encourages the preservation of agriculture on federal land. The county believes that agricultural land uses should remain a primary land use consistent with federal law designating grazing a primary multiple use. The county supports access and increased access to federal lands for agricultural development in a manner that satisfies local needs and provides for economical and environmentally sound agricultural practices and is consistent with and complementary to the lifestyle, character, and economy of southwestern Wyoming. Air quality. That was it for agriculture. On to air quality objectives at 4.2. Seawater County supports maintaining and improving air quality impacts that arise from federal land management, including research regarding ozone and its precursors, volatile organic compounds, VOC, and nitrous oxide in the county, including understanding non-area emission sources and the effects of wildfire smoke transported from other states. Because EPA, in conjunction with the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality, regulate air emissions and performance standards, federal land manager have limited authority to directly regulate air emissions. I do think, I think the DEQ actually does a very good job, and I'm glad that they have jurisdiction on air quality. I know, Casey, you've dealt with air quality. I think,
And they've been actually,
yeah,
Marty up in Lander's been great. So
Yeah.
I have no complaints.
yeah, exactly. Okay, and then we're moving on to, that's a very
The
short,
Department of Environmental Quality is Wyoming agency, but the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, is a federal one.
Yeah, we deal with the DEQ. It hasn't been bad.
It's a designated, yeah.
Yeah.
very reasonable to deal with and deal with, when they come on a situation, they deal with it with their regulations and not hypotheticals or anything. It's, Okay, so now we're on to cultural, historical, geologic, and paleontological. I don't even know, resources. Sweetwater County supports the preservation of significant cultural, historical, geologic, and paleontological heritage of the county, while recognizing that those sites that have lost their integrity or are no longer visible will no longer meet the criteria for protection. The county concludes that the protection of cultural, historical, geological, and paleontological resources through federal land management decisions must also be tied to the integrity, quality, and significance of each individual resource. Sweetwater County supports the mitigation of practical adverse effects to documented cultural, historical, and paleontological resources. Mitigation measures should include avoidance when possible or excavation. The county would support retaining the artifacts in a local museum. As a matter of policy, the county will participate in all undertakings and management decisions regarding cultural, historical, geological, paleontological resources. Sweetwater County supports the protection of historic sites and pioneer routes and the physical evidence of the settlement. Oops.
I can give you an example. On the refuge, one of the managers 20 years ago wanted to go in and destroy all of the old homesteads and did destroy some of them because it wasn't natural. The current manager is doing a history on it and protecting that, but that would be an example where the county could have weighed in and said, no, we
Yeah.
oppose that.
But the
Well,
county-
and
go
just
ahead,
as this is Connie, if I can just, I use the word undertaking specifically in that paragraph because the federal regulations require BLM, Fish and Wildlife Service, Bureau of Reclamation to contact the county if they're doing any kind of cultural resource project. And they don't like to, but I think it's really important for the county to have notice if you're going to end up in some kind of a unsatisfactory resolution of a historic site.
Well,
I mean,
Lincoln County, you can tell them about the Forest Service case where the Forest Service went in and ripped up an old trail.
Oh, yeah, well, that was,
without telling anyone.
that was a tragedy. I mean, they wanted to protect an inventoried roadless area. So they took a dozer and a couple of chainsaws and dozed off the trail and then laid logs down. And this was a historic trail. It had Forest Service wooden signs saying Historic Lander Trail. And they just dozed it. And then when I was reading, about similar cases, it turned out that the Forest Service had done the same thing down in Oklahoma and dozed the Cherokee, a segment of the Cherokee Trail of Tears. So they have quite a record of
You did it.
just doing that. And, SHPO was really, the State Historic Preservation Office was furious. But if they had to actually contact the county, at least in theory, someone would have said, wait a minute, this is a historic trail, you can't touch it.
Well, I've been dealing with the AML for numerous years now, abandoned mine lands, and they preserve all the historical sites for the old tipples, the old shafts, portals. They actually do a really good job about that, and they're pretty much on the ball on that. But also, again, state agency, not a federal. So,
Really?
yeah, wow.
Well, pay attention, Eric. You have to weigh in on those mine sites.
Thank you. The county believes that this is an important one, that private property rights or existing land uses such as oil and gas exploration, mining, logging and harvesting of forest products, road maintenance and grazing must also be respected, especially if a site has already been altered and the resources are no longer visible. Sweetwater County does not support.
Could add access to that if you wanted, Eric.
Okay,
Where
Let's
it
do
says
that.
Road access and maintenance.
road access and maintenance. Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so we'll add maintenance to 5.2.6 after, so it'll be read road access and maintenance. Okay, excellent. Sweetwater County does not support broad landscape areas as cultural sites. I just have a question on that. just what that is
Oh,
exactly.
okay, it's like, I don't understand what
Yep.
that is.
So
Well,
Connie, if you could
I-
explain that.
Yes, I can. One of the concepts that came about in the northern Arizona withdrawal controversy, which was the BLM desert, 40 miles away from the Grand Canyon, that area was withdrawn, and the withdrawal was justified based on a cultural landscape. And it's a new concept in the cultural resources field, not based on statute, but mainly coming from advocates, that they should be able to say, well, this landscape is generally important for a culture. And therefore, we're going to designate this entire landscape as culturally important. And I can see where if there's an area that an Indian tribe says, we've always had this religious ceremony here, and this particular stand of trees is very important to us, that is absolutely protected. That's under the American Indian Religious Freedom Act. It's under the protection of traditional activities, and that's protected. But when you start looking at 500,000 acres, 1 million acres as important in a landscape scale, the law does not encompass that, and yet I'm seeing a big push for that. So that's why I put that in.
Grand Staircase Escalante, but that's a different issue.
Yeah, exactly. But that was only 3 million.
Oh, small amount.
Yeah.
Visual resource management classifications should not be used to expand the scope of protection beyond the actual physical resource or site.
100 miles on the Oregon Trail,
Okay, so now we're on to the next section of ditches, canals, and pipelines. Okay, 6.2.1. The county supports access and increased access to federal lands for canals and ditches and agricultural development in a manner that satisfies local needs and provides for economical, environmentally sound water conveyance practices and is consistent with and complementary to the county lifestyle, culture, and economy. The county also supports the grants of right-of-way across federal land for ditches necessary for water conveyance needs. And the county recognizes and will protect the existence of all legal canals, laterals, pipelines, or ditch right-of-ways. Any questions on that section? Pretty quick? Yeah. On to energy. So 7.2.1. Sweetwater County recognized the importance of the energy industry to the county economy. The energy industry also relies on well servicing and transport services located in Sweetwater County. Here's an important one. County also supports for the mining of coal on federal land. Coal is mined near the Jim Bridger power plants from operations on both private and federal land. The future of the Sweetwater County coal production remains clouded by Pacific Corp policies to close all coal-fired power plants by 2037 and replace them with renewable energy. While retrofitting the plants with carbon capture technology or natural gas remains an option, Pacific Corp has not fully committed. Recently, Pacific Corp signed an agreement with Governor Gordon to convert the Jim Bridger Units 1 and 2 to natural gas and to oppose the EPA rejection of reduced operations of Jim Bridger to comply with air quality standards and an amendment to the state implementation plan. Press release, Office of the Governor, February 17, 2022. Connie, I don't know if you want to add anything in there, but, or Commissioner Toman.
Yeah, there's a Public Service Commission hearing on March 23rd and 24th at 5 o'clock in Rock Springs on the Integrated Resource Plan, Rocky Mountain Power's plans for the future. And yeah,
What date was
IRP.
it, Mary?
Well, I showed on my calendar it's 23rd and 24th. I'm not positive. It says 5 o'clock, so we need to check that one out, but you should let them know about that one because somebody should go. I'll try to be there, one of them.
Okay. I'll be sure Danielle's aware of it.
Yeah, I think she is, but I
Okay.
have it on my calendar. It popped up, but I'm not sure on the details.
I'll get that information, those dates and send it out to you guys
Okay,
if
perfect.
you're interested
Thank
in
you.
it. Because they
Well-
usually do those online too, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, they do? Okay.
I do know that the commission really appreciates hearing from Western Wyoming, and I don't mean that tongue in cheek. They don't hear enough from Western Wyoming, and they recognize that this is important.
Well, Commissioner Johnson and Kent Conley from Lincoln County, they turned the tide. Talk about that just a second. They turned the tide with the Public Service Commission in the state as to what they were doing with those.
Yeah, their testimony was really important.
So the coalition will be making comments. We can get those to you if you want to help bring them forth at that hearing. And I'll go do the same, but if a couple of us are there, push the same message.
Perfect. Seawater County also supports a uranium mine at the Lost Creek, which uses in situ leaching. The county's support for the mineral industries is based on the fact that employment directly related to energy produces earning at a rate almost twice that of other jobs in the state. The county's economy reflects the energy industry long-term jobs.
Connie, under 7.2, above that, I think you should add lithium rare earth, because with the batteries and the green energy, there's going to be a big push to mine every bit of lithium and the rare earth. So
rare earth minerals.
yeah, I would put that up above 7.2.
Okay, and I'll add that the limits on storage. It came up at a dinner party I was at on Saturday.
Good. Glad you went on a dinner party. The other one I would add under energy is that, what about hydropower? We don't really have any in the county, but we have dams and reservoirs. Do you want?
You do, and
On the
certainly
overview.
the Bridger Power Co-op uses hydro. Wyoming has a lot of hydro.
Well, you probably need to add hydro somewhere in that overview.
Okay, I'll put that in. I'm sorry, I keep thinking of Sweetwater County as being so dry.
It is this year. Yeah.
Yeah, it's bad.
Eric or Mary, do you want anything in there about selling the plants before they're shut down?
That was part of the testimony. De Leon is asking, do we want to put anything about the legislation that went through as a result of that testimony for the Public Service Commission about they can't decommission the power plant without trying to sell them? Can you talk to that a little bit?
You're talking to me?
Yes.
Sure. Back in 2019, the legislature basically put a limit on Pacific Corp's ability to shut down a coal power plant by saying that they had to offer it for sale. The commission adopted regulations setting out the process that would occur and kind of how they would price it. It's going to be complicated. Pacific Corp does not want to be forced into selling these plants so that they would continue to produce coal power. But I can see a path that would be pretty clear that Pacific Corp would actually retain the plant and either do it for carbon capture and storage, or another scenario would be they would retain the plant and rent it to a Bitcoin company. It's going to
Can
be
we put
hard.
that in there under 7.2.5.1, or could we add another thing? It might not be popular, but I think in defense of our local workforce, it's an economy. It's important. Is there a way to add a statement somehow?
Yes, I will.
That's
And I'll
not
just
too
say that the rule
inflammatory.
Yeah.
that bind Pacific Corp and a plant cannot be closed until it's been put on the market for possible purchase. And the county supports and will actively seek a buyer for the plant.
Shouldn't you maybe, to cover all bases, put in there also in case Bridger Power Plant wants to go to natural gas or to to nuke? I mean, you really don't want to tie their hands completely. Say either keep the coal or, find something else, but put some
Yeah,
other alternatives.
Stay in
there.
operation. Yes.
Yeah.
You know, my inkling on the whole coal-fired power plants is the best way to protect the jobs and the revenue stream in Sweetwater County is to keep it in coal. And looking at the country or the region in a bigger perspective, coal is one of the best ways for a black start, you know, beginning, whereas it takes quite, you know, at least a full day for wind power to gear up if you had to shut everything down. So I think losing coal-fired power plants in the power fabric is dangerous. And so I'm biased in favor of keeping the coal plants going and the mines going.
Well, and you know, they're not given the two facts on the green energy. The landfills are full of blades and we're only using 3%
Right.
green energy. And how many of those cars are we going to have stranded on the interstate, you know, with the batteries?
Well, I'll add a paragraph about renewable energy environmental costs.
Excellent.
I'm just going to throw it out there just because it's something that I've seen in this area on the legal side of it. And Connie, I'm saying it mainly for you because for you to contemplate if there's any value. So with Bridger, there was past bonding. They were supposed to fix, re-outfit some of those units with that bonding. There were certain requirements for that bonding. I don't know that those requirements, because so all four of those were supposed to be re-outfitted. I don't know if they were. And so there's certainly some potential, in addition to requiring sale, there's potential leverage in terms of, you know, they're trying to not look backwards, but you know, whether or not they followed all of their bonding requirements and they used their money the way they said they were going to use it, that's getting pretty deep into the weeds. But I just wanted to be able to identify that. I'm not sure that Pacific Power is aware of those weeds or if those weeds have been discussed. But I just wanted to present that to you, Bonnie, for your consideration.
No, that's really helpful. I was aware of, you know, I've looked at all of their approvals from the Public Service Commission for retrofitting and upgrading the plants. And they did at least 2, but they didn't do the other 2. And
well, that's a fight right
I
now
did
with
look at the bonds. The bonds are really important because that's where they start facing some serious liability. So
Yeah, that's and it's in when they were at the PSC, a decent amount of the focus was on the economic impact.
Yes.
Versus the legal requirements to have followed through with the bonding and retrofitting requirements. And so there was a look, the legal arguments were economic in nature. It was to follow the requirement for resale, but it didn't didn't necessarily look into that retrofitting requirement. And that is an element that again, I defer to you and everybody else to think about its value.
No, I think it's helpful.
Well, I think the big fight where DEQ under this administration does not want to accept Wyoming EPA's agreement with Pacific Core to reduce the ozone by simply cutting down the number of hours it was in operation, instead of that unit 2 didn't get supplied with equipment to reduce ozone. They reduce the ozone by reducing the number of hours of operation. So I don't know how that fits in with bonding, but that's the big fight right now of closing those two.
Well, that solution enabled Pacific Core to avoid spending money on that plant and kept it on the fence as to whether to commit to closing the plant or commit to upgrading the plant. And we're saying Rocky Mountain Power is spending a lot of time, and it's the wholly owned subsidiary of Pacific Core. They're spending a lot of time on the fence with these units. And that irritates me just because they did get approval to upgrade the unit that they're now not operating as much. And they never upgraded it. But they did do the other two, so.
Yeah. Is there any way the county can hold their feet to the fire? I don't know if we have any recourse at all, do we?
Not really, not unless it's getting the commission to do an investigation as to why they haven't, done their upgrades. And the commission is happy.
Not our
do-
commission, Public Service Commission. Oh, yeah. not
Oh,
us.
yeah, I'm sorry, the Public Service Commission. Yeah, no, the Public Service Commission doesn't have a lot of love for Pacific Core right now.
But we have to weigh that against the economic impacts to the county and our workforce. So we
Yes.
have to walk a fine line. We
Well,
wanna
and-
support.
Yeah.
No, and I just want to be sure that they actually keep these plants operating and that the mines stay operating and that this remains a viable part of the power grid. And if it's owned by someone else, that's fine too.
No guarantee either.
And it gets everyone off the hook. But it's interesting that Pacific Core really feels strongly that this is their asset. And you would think that the option of selling it would be a popular one, and it just wasn't.
Well, it wouldn't be popular because whoever buys it still has to do these upgrades. It's still going to cost them money. Where
Oh,
Pacific
yeah.
Corp's already there. It's cheaper for them to do it than a new buyer.
Yeah.
So if
Well,
you can
that's
work
probably
with
true.
Pacific Corp, yeah, if you can work with them, I definitely don't want to discourage any job losses at either Black Butte or Bridger Coal or the power plant itself. So if there's any way you can work hand in hand, like say, we need to get these upgrades done to keep the governors in Wyoming, future governors involved, and make sure that we get this stuff done so we don't lose it, but we don't want to step on their toes and have them say it's more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah,
Mary said,
no,
it's
you're right.
Definitely walking a fine line there.
Right, true.
Good discussion. This is an important section because of everything that's going on. So on 7.2.5, we have the coal and electricity, which is what we're talking about. So Sweetwater County supports the continued operation of the Jim Bridger plan to provide
Plant.
reliable
Plant. Yeah.
plant. I should say plant, right?
Yes, sorry.
Well, spelling doesn't pick that up because it's
spelled
it's still a word. Yeah. To provide reliable and relatively low cost electricity. The power plants and the related mines provide essential jobs and revenues to the county, and federal energy and land management should facilitate the continued operation of the power plant. The county supports the testing and investment in carbon capture and storage technology to bring the Jim Bridger units into compliance with air quality standards, while allowing CO2 generated to increase production in aging oil fields.
Sorry, I have a quick
Go ahead.
question
Yeah.
with that. So the recapturing of the CO2, University of Wyoming they've dumped a lot of money in University of Wyoming to do that. Is there any way that they could work together?
I'll just add a comment, and then Connie, if she has anything, but so in Gillette, they have that testing. Have you heard about that
Yep.
testing center that they have there? So if anybody wants to test carbon capture type of projects, they can do that. And from what I understand, because we've met with actually Holly Krucka with University of Wyoming, I believe she runs the
Hobbs School. Yeah.
Yep, she runs this, yep. And she's heavily involved with carbon capture. So the University of Wyoming, from what I understand, they are working with carbon capture and the research and projects. They do have to go through a process for that, which is that facility that was, I believe it's been constructed in Gillette, that testing center. They have to go through that. And there is federal money that's available for someone who, if they would want to test their carbon capture, because we've actually been approached at the county from some, and I believe they spoke at the Coalition of Local Governments, company out of California that was interested in doing carbon capture.
It wasn't carbon
Techno-
capture, it was carbon
Oh, yeah.
utilization. I don't-
Utilization, exactly. Yep.
They put a plant in to take the carbon emissions
Yep.
and process it through beet pulp somehow and turn it into diesel fuel and
Oh, wow.
other products from the carbon. I'm more in favor of that than I am injecting it back down into the underground.
Sure.
Is the
especially
carbon, I don't know what you call it, carbon,
utilization.
yeah,
Or no.
carbon utilization, yeah. I don't know what the buzzword is.
And then the other thing that's popular right now is hydrogen and utilizing that, especially with the infrastructure. They're talking about these regional hubs where I don't know if you saw that the governor signed a letter of us working regionally with the surrounding states for a hydrogen type hub. I don't know a lot about it, but as far as the carbon capture, I don't know if that answers your question, Casey, but
No, it's just one way where you can marry to the industries in there, maybe. So it's a proactive, so Bridger's looking at it proactive, the county's looking at it, the government's looking at it proactive, just, we don't want it to go away. We're trying
Agreed.
to, help facilitate it.
Yep.
Yeah.
agree 100% with that. Any way that Sweetwater County can assist in that, we're more than with Sweetwater Economic Development. We've written supporting letters for that. I agree 100% with what you're saying. Something we need to support. Connie, I don't know if you want to add anything on carbon.
No, I
Capture.
have nothing else to add. I mean, I think it's,
Well, you have
It-
to add
it-
carbon utilization or manufacturing. I don't know what you call it.
Okay.
And then hydrogen, something about hydrogen.
okay, I'll add a paragraph on hydrogen.
Yeah.
That would be great. The county supports the testing and investment in carbon capture and storage technology. The Bridger, we've already done that one. Okay, Sweetwater County will support new transmission lines that remain within the designated corridors and oppose transmission lines that are modified to cross private lands and avoid federal lands. And Connie, if you may want to add something, just comment on that.
Okay. That has not actually happened in Sweetwater counties to date. The transmission lines have followed the energy corridors that were established in 2007, 2008. But what we did see, actually, we saw a few segments in the eastern edge of the county, and the power company was persuaded to nudge the route onto private land because the federal government didn't want the environmental impacts of the transmission line route. I think that was the Trans-West Express line, but we saw it in a major way for the route through Lincoln County, an Energy Gateway West transmission line, which now, dead ends at the Jim Bridger plants. If they go with the next western segment, that will cross primarily private land. And it was a raw deal. But I think that what we have seen in the past is if there are environmental reasons or if the routes are too crowded, the power company is moving over into private land. And the counties just don't have that much private land. That
Gateway South, I think they're trying to hit mostly private land, but they ran.
yeah, they did.
They're in a snag right now with somebody that's trying to hijack them.
Yeah. Well, and Energy Gateway South in Colorado was where they, found themselves digging up a county road because someone thought they have medicine wheels or fire wheels and, somehow buried in the road. Now they've been blading this road for 100 years, but be that as it may, they're digging great big giant holes in the middle of the road. Anyway, moving along.
Thank you.
One thing, Eric.
Go ahead,
This
Mark.
may not be the section, but on the transmission lines, does that include water or where would that kind of be into? And then if it was hydroelectric or anything of that nature?
Oh, yeah, we don't
There's a
want,
section on water in there.
and we don't
on
want Denver
diversion.
stealing
Yeah.
our water, Connie. You have to make
Oh, yeah,
sure.
it's in there.
right.
This is, I believe
I'm
this is,
sure, like I said, sure it was another.
this is
section.
electrical. Yeah, no, it's in there.
Oh, yeah, no.
And then Sweetwater County will support renewable energy so long as it conforms to the county zoning. As we know that
Well,
we're
and
not
you could-
opposing it. We're just saying it needs, there's certain areas that it shouldn't be in. Okay.
Well, you might put parentheses, see county wind and solar
Sure, we can do that.
zoning regulations or something.
Okay.
to
I'll
refer
cite to it.
Right.
Okay,
All right, on to oil and gas sector. The county policy will require that federal land management plans and environmental impact statements demonstrate the following: that the authorized planning agency has considered and evaluated the mineral energy potential in the planning area, using the assumption that all areas are open to mineral development under standard lease terms unless federal law provides otherwise. That the federal agency disclose the effect of management descriptions and proposed lease stipulations when measured against the area's baseline mineral and energy potential. That the development provisions do not unduly restrict access to public lands for energy exploration and development. And that the federal agency documented the proposed closure of additional areas to mineral leasing and development of, or any increase of acres subject to no surface occupancy restrictions, and that any closure was proposed as a withdrawal or management decision consistent with Energy Policy Act and FLIPMA.
Yeah, I don't want to pull you aside again, but that mineral potential thing, that's why they say we only have 200 years worth of gas or coal, is because they didn't bother to list all the other, it's only what it had been surveyed to proven resources when we might have 1,000 years worth of. So that's kind of, I don't know, is that addressed, Connie?
well,
It gives
you know,
baseline mineral and
we don't
energy
expressly address it,
potential.
but I thought I got to there when I talk about,
When measured against the area's baseline mineral and energy potential.
no, it's not there, it's further down.
Okay.
When I thought I talked about mineral potential in terms of new technology, but if I don't, I'll add that in, because what I have seen is that a lot of areas that were deemed to not have mineral potential suddenly become the greatest and newest field because a new technology, a new way of looking at the geoseismic data says, oh, wait a minute, we have a field down here. And so every area that was deemed to not have that much suddenly has tremendous potential.
And
So
on the reverse side, they'll say, no, we don't have any surveyed proven mineral potential. So therefore we're going to close this whole area and make it a area of critical environmental concern or for
exactly,
wildlife.
no, that's been sort of the standard approach, or the familiar one is, well, we don't have any producing wells here, so obviously there's no potential.
Oh, okay.
And
So
I've heard
therefore we're
that.
not going to let anybody lease that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just, if it isn't there, then it couldn't possibly be there. And we've seen that disproven in virtually every field there is. Just better technology, someone's new creativity, and you have a new field.
Okay. 7.2.6.2. Sweetwater County believes that federal land should be available for oil and gas leasing and development with least restrictive stipulations needed to mitigate impacts to other public land resources and uses. The county opposes unnecessary federal rules and standards associated with hydraulic fracturing, and supports the revocation of all remaining direction for master leasing plans, which imposed unnecessary planning step. Sweetwater County supports the rights of way to transport crude oil, natural gas, and CO2 for carbon capture and storage technology. And if you wanted to include in there, Mary. What did you
Right.
say? Utilization?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll
Okay.
correct that.
CO2 for carbon
Okay.
capture. I don't know if it's called utilization. I don't know what the bus.
I don't know either.
I'm not sure either.
It's had a big
Somehow that's sticking in my
presentation,
head,
but I
but
can't remember
yeah,
what they call it.
there is a term for it. It's probably not the right one. We can figure that out.
Yeah, okay. I'll look back on that presentation.
Sweetwater County opposes the cancellation or withdrawal of existing lease rights and supports upholding existing lease rights and the intent of the original lease terms without modification or cancellation. The county supports an efficient process to secure waivers of lease stipulations based on site-specific information. And the county believes that mineral resource development should occur with science-based reclamation practices and responsible land stewardship.
That's kind of a big one because that was in the Rollins area, between here and Rollins and in Kemmer.
Mhm.
They were shut down on oil and drilling because they've exceeded the 5% disturbance cap and they hadn't reclaimed properly. And then the companies went broke and left. And
The county supports the concept of mitigation, but will be involved in any initiative, mitigation, or compensatory mitigation programs or studies. Sweetwater County believes that all federal lands should be presumed to be open to mineral leasing with fact-based stipulations and conditions. And let's see. So call upon the federal agencies who administer federal lands within Sweetwater County to fully cooperate and coordinate with the county to develop, amend, and implement land and resource management plans, and to implement management decisions that are consistent with the purposes, goals, and policies described in this plan to the maximum extent allowed under federal law. Expedite the processing, granting, and streamlining of mineral energy leases and applications to drill, extract, and otherwise develop all existing energy and mineral resources located with the county, including oil, natural gas, oil shale, oil sands. Okay, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Is it gilsonite? Do I have that right?
I always say gilsonite.
Okay,
But I-
gilsonite. Sure.
better add lithium and the rare earth minerals.
So
I'll add that.
Okay, phosphate, gold, uranium, copper, solar, and wind resources. Allowed continued maintenance and increased development of roads, power lines, pipeline infrastructure, and other utilities necessary to achieve the goals, purposes, and policies described in this section. And refrain from any planning decisions and management actions that will undermine, restrict, or diminish the goals, purposes, and policies for the county. Sweetwater County supports the Wyoming's conservation plan for greater sage grouse and support changes in the federal plans to conform.
How come that's not under wildlife? Is that because of withdrawals or?
I had it on my notes to move it to wildlife.
Okay,
But we have the sage grouse withdrawal areas. It does affect oil and gas leasing. So I don't know.
It does. And in particular, what I was thinking about at that time was that the state's conditions for oil and gas leasing were more flexible, whereas the Bureau of Land Management plans are inflexible completely on oil and gas leasing. You shall be so many miles away from a lek, and if you aren't, then you're down. Whereas the Wyoming plan had some flexibility and options for waivers. So maybe I just tie this to the oil and gas leasing conditions set
Okay.
forth in the plan.
yeah, that sounds good.
And the areas to be protected. Again, BLM included a lot more land under protections and limited stipulations.
That sounds good, Connie.
Okay,
The county supports the enforcement of reclamation standards and rules to ensure that plugged and abandoned sites are reclaimed in a timely and appropriate manner. Okay, and that's it for that oil and gas section. Now we're on to wildfire management. Okay, so Sweetwater County finds that wildfires have socially and environmentally significant costs. The cost of fire suppression is only a fraction of the true total costs associated with a wildfire event. Wildfire can spread quickly and overrun towns and homes at great individual cost to residents. Some of the costs associated with wildfire suppression include the direct costs, resources lost and structures burned, rehabilitation costs, post-fire floods and land restoration, indirect costs, low sales and county taxes, and additional costs, loss of life and damage to water and air quality, And this is the Western Forestry Leadership Coalition 2009. And then the county also finds that the indirect and cumulative costs include deterioration in water and air quality. Oh, I didn't mean to read through that. I'm sorry. I just noticed that I just went right into the next section. So let's go down to the objectives. I apologize for that. Okay. So Sweetwater County supports active and adaptive forest management to restore and improve forest health and to achieve multiple use and sustained yield with emphasis on employment, forest product production, open space, wildlife, habitat, forage, recreation, and other social and economic benefits. The county encourages management of forest resources to reduce the risk of catastrophic fires, which cause unacceptable harm to resources and assets valued by society, including ecosystem and community health and resilience. The forested areas in the Flaming Gorge National Recreation Area and the Ashley National Forest have suffered from disease and an insect infestation for several decades. The resulting fuel loads make the forest a high risk for wildfire with resulting adverse impacts to municipal watersheds and other resources.
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
This might sound like a silly question, John, you and Connie, but is there any way that Wyoming could legally sue, for instance, states of California, Oregon, Washington, for no land management on their forests? I mean, that's where we get all our smoke. Is there any way we could have any way to legally maybe make them take care of their forests?
The
don't know,
short
it's just a
answer would
question.
be no.
Yeah.
But you could sue the Forest Service for not taking care of the forests. It's a long shot and it wouldn't go, it wouldn't get very far. But you could sue the Forest Service for not managing the California, Oregon, Washington, and Nevada forest systems in accordance with the Healthy Forest Restoration Act.
Yeah.
Because they haven't done it. I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
go up to, for instance, I mean, how much revenue does Wyoming lose from people wanting to go up to see the Tetons? You go up there, you can't see them because of smoke.
well,
I just-
and you
I-
have a secondary loss because, big parts of Wyoming, northern Utah, are suffering under threats of air quality
Yeah.
action and the inability to expand oil and gas fields, for example, because there's, too much volatile organic compounds in the air.
Exactly.
No,
Well,
it's
right now,
it's-
we're in the process on the Ashley National Forest. That plan has gone public. It's open to the public to comment on. And we are through through her associate now, commenting all of that. But we did have a stakeholder meeting last week, and to their credit, they're not allowing very much harvesting of board feet of lumber, but they had like 60 some people on Zoom the other day, identifying key areas in the Ashley National Forest in Wyoming and Utah where they need to focus on doing some kind of timber management, whether it's hacking it or thinning it or whatever.
well, the Ashley has had some really bad fires. And it really scared them because it was their favorite recreation sites in a big wilderness area. And the fire occurred right next to a huge stand of gray timber that's dead. And I think they finally had a wake-up call and went, oh my gosh. But even on the Ashley, they had tremendous landslides after that fire. And they almost burned into the Indian reservation. So they faced a political problem with the tribe. Because if the fire had run into the Uinta Indian reservation, it would have been ugly.
You're just held to such a double standard with everything,
Yeah.
they're complaining about Jim Bridger, but how much more pollutants are we getting from one of those fires than we are from Jim
Oh,
Bridger? And
yeah.
it's just asinine.
It's every summer too.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's not. Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, Connie, I was.
No,
silly
it's-
question, but
It's a favorite topic of mine too.
The county supports vegetation projects to reduce fuels and encourage native plant resilience elsewhere on the public land, which face similar risk of fuel loading and wildfire. Commissioner Toman, does that include like Little Mountain and Pine Mountain where there's beetle kill and stuff?
That's what I was thinking of.
Okay, that's what I figured.
But I wasn't sure I had a good enough handle on exactly which other forest areas there were, so I didn't want to start naming
But
names.
that's a BLM area. That's in BLM stage is Little Mountain. It's not Ashley.
Oh, that's true. That's true. It's outside the
Well,
recreation.
But that's okay. It fits within that paragraph because we're talking about public lands.
Yeah, A22, you should say the forested areas in Flaming Gorge, Recreation, Ashley National Forest, Bureau of Land Management, state lands. And state lands have suffered from disease for several decades. I think you could add those.
Okay,
Under 822.
got it.
Okay. The county supports increased grazing allotments, AUMs, or seasonal use to reduce fine fuel loads. Sweetwater County believes that federal agencies need to identify and treat fire hazards on all federal lands. The county supports opportunities to use and harvest forest products that have been affected by federal land wildfire or pests, beetle. Sweetwater County supports the timely processing and approval of National Environmental Policy Act projects associated with timber harvest so that the environmental and economic benefits can be maximized. The county will participate in the planning for,
Whoa,
oh.
second.
no, go ahead.
What about stewardship? Because it's not very good harvestable material. So stewardship projects is that somewhere in here? Might
You
not
know,
be
it isn't per se.
Might not be a timber harvest because they don't want it,
Yeah,
so-
no, you're right. If we call it stewardship,
Yeah, they're not.
Right.
maybe
haven't
I
determined
add
whether the beetle
stewardship.
kill has impacted the structure of the tree enough to actually be able to use it for anything other than.
Well, it's like juniper,
Yeah.
what do you want to use it for? But it could be a stewardship project where you actually, the collaborative might get grants and money to go in there and thin it or manage it.
Even if they chip it and put it back in to use as organic. I mean,
So do you get that, Connie, what we're saying?
Yes, I do.
I forgot about our tree expert, Mr. Mark Lyon. Can we plant some trees down by the gorge? We need some shade down there.
Oh,
I have been dubbed the Lorax, so.
I've heard that.
I'll just put up a few more fence posts. The Wyoming tree doesn't need water.
Yeah. The county will participate in the planning for and revision of USFS forest management plans and BLM resource management plans affecting forest health and restoration.
And you might add state, the state
Oh, yeah,
forestry.
yeah.
Do you have that somewhere, Connie? State forestry.
Okay, and I'll add state forestry.
Yeah,
Got it.
because they try to help us coordinate some of that stuff on state lands.
No, and that makes sense.
Yeah. Sweetwater County also encourages federal land managers to open appropriate areas for commercial timber harvest
Where appropriate or something.
where appropriate. Okay,
I think that's where you could say, or stewardship projects somehow.
Okay. Or
Commercial
stewardship
timber
projects,
harvest
yeah.
where appropriate, or stewardship. I don't know how you define it.
Okay,
Sweetwater County supports vegetation and wildfire treatments in the Flaming Gorge National Recreation Area and the Ashley National Forest to restore forest health and urges the Forest Service to include these goals in the land use plans. These treatments are essential to manage and restore the forest for future generations. Sweetwater County supports restoration projects and operations in the event of natural or man-made disasters. Access shall be allowed in order to perform restoration efforts. And that's it for the timber section. Now on to fisheries. The county supports the maintenance, enhancement, and expansion of sport fishing opportunities on federal land. Sweetwater County encourages the protection and preservation of water quality and fish habitat while balancing the needs of other water users, including those holding water rights. The county supports the enhancement of public access across federal lands for fishing opportunities. Sweetwater County supports and encourages federal land management agencies to provide, maintain sufficient opportunities for fishing on federal lands through participation in planning efforts. And then the county will continue coordination with federal land management agencies on water and fishery treatments.
What about access on navigable rivers through private property?
Did you hear that, Connie?
Yeah, how do you want to come out on that one?
I think it's still part of an access issue. So wherever we support access across federal land, I think you have to put federal and situations of private
I don't think so,
navigable
Mark.
waters.
I don't think so, because if you have private land, I've seen some of this happens to some of these private lands where people just don't care. And so the owner should have a little bit of recourse. I don't know how I feel about going across private land.
It does eliminate some of the access.
It
to
does.
other
I
areas.
realize that.
And I think that's the only problem is the access.
Well, and you end up with two different situations. In Colorado, for years, we were asked, but otherwise no access. And in Montana, you've had the public trust doctrine giving the public the right to cross private land to reach navigable waters. And both can be kind of divisive. So, you know, I'll write it up, but I need to know where you think the county wants to be on this one.
Well, and I guess that's a discussion that we decide if that's important or not.
It can be very important. And I've been on both sides of that one, even physically, you know, I'm canoeing down a river and,
Yeah,
you
there's a
know,
fence
we
across it.
basically dumped the canoe and I was on the bank.
Mhm.
I guess Mark, I fall under the guise of, if it's private land, unless there was an established road there before, I think it should be asked to receive permission. I really do. Because I've seen what happens when people take, they abuse that right to go through that, not the right, the privilege of going through somebody's private land, and you see the trash and it's, the public's not the ones that are going to be responsible in cleaning it up. It's the owner.
Well, and I guess what I'm talking about is just access on the water. I mean, because,
Oh, on the water's fine. That's just to get to the water.
yeah, not to the water, but on the water.
Hey, Mark, here's
Okay.
my thing.
Yeah.
The one thing we're looking at here is federal lands and BLM. This is a document to help us with them. Let's not throw something in there to
Yeah.
help with the rancher down the road or, just let's stay.
Well, and it's kind of tricky in this county because the Green River is mostly through the refuge with no overnight camping. But you do have some private property rights like ours on the Alkali Creek on the Green River. Some of those water rights go to the edge of the high water mark. Some go to the center of the river.
Mhm.
And RSGA on a lot of that land, the odd numbered sections in that part of the county, they would own pieces of land that they would own everything because it goes under, it includes property on both sides of the river and the river.
Yeah, and I
So-
think this is a good conversation, not for this document.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, we shouldn't talk about the private issue right now. We're just dealing with the feds. Yeah.
That's fine.
But it's a fun conversation. We should have this sometime.
Because you could have a lawsuit going either way on that one. I don't want them to run through or if they do, I think Wyoming does allow them to go on a navigable river, though, on the Green River, as long as they don't get out.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think they can do it. They
Yep.
can float the river even though.
Yeah,
it
if the
goes through-
river is navigable, but you have a lot of creeks too, where people will be walking down the
Right.
creek bed. And
That's
it's
where they're
technically
supposed
not
to
a
be.
navigable water.
Right. So I think you do have permission or access rights as long as you don't get off on somebody's property.
I just didn't know how it fit in with this document. and
Yeah.
Evidently it
No.
doesn't, so.
You're pretty smart though, so you're picking up on all this.
Good questions, good discussion. Okay, so we're on to, I believe it's water, floodplains and river terraces. So 10.2.1. Let's see here. Seawater County supports the restoration and management of floodplain connectivity on federal lands for wildlife in areas outside human habitation while preserving the health safety of residents. And just so you're aware, we do not participate in floodplain. We have not adopted flood maps. So from a regulatory standpoint, we can't do anything with that.
You'll
about it.
do wetlands though. See, that was a man-made one.
Yeah, except for in a subdivision. So when we do get subdivision review, take Ranch View, for instance, that has actually we thought it had a wetland section in it, but it did not. It did not. We had the people from the state come out and they did not determine it as a wetland. So it wasn't in floodplain or wetland. We had some issues with that, but
That's an interesting point though, on the BLM, if they put in a duck pond out there on the Lombard allotment east of Green River
Yeah.
of the river.
Yeah.
There's several duck ponds out there now are considered federal wetlands.
oh,
You
wetlands, yeah, it's a
cannot
whole other issue. Yeah.
de-water them. You have to leave them alone,
Hmm.
even though they're man-made to start with.
The county supports Bureau of Reclamation, the Wyoming Division of Water Rights Dams to Safety programs that assess existing dam conditions to prevent dam failure or uncontrolled release of water that are on federal land or will affect federal land. On to forest management.
Well,
This is,
Fontenelle did break once, it affected us severely.
You
Green
did,
River
yes,
City.
yes, you did.
Green River City got it too.
Yes, they did.
so, we're our cooperators on the Ashley National Forest. So this does come in handy for that. Sweetwater County supports forest management plans that adopt effective management techniques to promote a stable forest economy and enhance forest health in accordance with National Healthy Forest Initiative and the Healthy Forest Restoration Act as amended in 2014. Commissioner Tillman, just a question for you. So when we get into the national recreation area, is this what we would utilize for management plans? Or
Yes,
do we need to include that? or
I
just-
can add the NRA, but it will apply because the NRA is managed as a unit of the National Forest System in addition to being managed pursuant to the statutory criteria under the Colorado River Act
Oh, okay.
that created the dam.
Okay, perfect. Sweetwater County shall be directly involved in the development and implementation of the Ashley National Forest Management Plan, particularly in regards to the restoration of forest health for Forest Service managed lands in Wyoming, as well as the north slope of the Uinta Mountains. The county supports active and adaptive forest management to improve and restore forest health and support multiple use and sustained yield with emphasis on employment, forest product production, open space, wildlife habitat, forage, recreation, and other social and economic benefits.
Do we need to add grazing there or not? Connie,
Yep.
And
Glenn,
what?
grazing, do we have to add grazing
Um,
or is it covered under
Yeah,
forage?
but
it's under forage because we have forage for both domestic
Okay.
wildlife and
Okay,
wildlife.
Yeah,
Yep.
all right.
Sweetwater County believes that federal agencies must manage forest resources to reduce the risk of catastrophic fires, which cause unacceptable harm to resource and asset valued by society, including ecosystem and community health and resilience. Sweetwater County urges the federal agencies to manage forests to support the local forest product market at sustainable harvest levels. County supports forest watershed management to achieve optimal water yield without compromising other resources. Sweetwater County supports opening appropriate areas in the National Forest System for commercial timber harvest and facilitating commercial uses for timber and forest products affected by wildfire or pests.
Or stewardship. Do you add stewardship in there somewhere, Connie?
Yeah, I will add stewardship.
Sweetwater County believes that management programs must provide opportunities for citizens to harvest forest products for personal needs, economic value, and forest health. Sound economic approaches considering both long and short-term goals shall be used when considering the harvesting of both wood and non-wood products, and appropriate social values shall be considered. The county supports management programs that reduce fuel load and risk of wildfire to prevent catastrophic events and reduce fire potential at the residential or town interface. Management and harvest programs should provide opportunities for local citizens and small businesses. It is the county's policy to protect timber resources and promote the continuation of a sustainable wood products industry. Because the Forest Service believes that the 2001 inventory roadless conservation area. Rule prohibits vegetation and cutting timber in the area. Sweetwater County calls for the revision of the inventoried roadless areas in the Ashley National Forest and Flaming Gorge National Recreation Area. That was a big deal, the inventoried roadless areas. See how,
I like that. Then it doesn't tie your hands.
right?
Yeah.
They've got it locked in.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we can get to, let's see here. Let's see what we can do. Get land access is a good one. So, but this next one is, hold on.
It's just irrigation.
It's
And I
irrigation,
wasn't
okay.
sure how much irrigation you had,
We have two
other than
districts,
hay fields.
Parson and,
Parson, I forget about, yeah.
and McKinnon, right?
Yeah, you have two salinity projects that are funded with the BOR money to reduce salinity on the Colorado River.
Yeah.
Okay, then they're important.
Farson and McKinnon, they had a new,
Yeah,
the
Farson is-
Henry's Fork.
Ken does it too, huh?
I just
Well,
can't remember
they've
the
got a new
one. Is
a
it,
new salinity project, yeah.
Huh.
To reduce the salt, they'll help pay for the pivot projects. So they're not flooding the salt down
yep,
the river.
yep. Sweetwater County encourages federal land managers to allow access and increase access to public lands for irrigation development and maintenance in a manner that satisfies local needs and provides for economical and environmentally sound agricultural and irrigation practices, is consistent with and complementary to the Sweetwater County lifestyle, culture, and economy, and respects the rights to develop and put water to beneficial use while crossing federal land.
Do we want to say anything about the Colorado River stuff and our priority water rights for,
You know, I think I covered that in water.
okay, all right,
Yep,
Yeah.
there's a,
Um, Yeah, no,
yeah.
that's
Okay.
what, that was definitely on the back of my mind, but the problem is water comes at the very end.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't know, like at 1:30.
But I did
last
try
night,
to, I toned
get the-
down some of the language. It's not too hideous. I don't say, you know, Sweetwater County opposes efforts by California to steal their water.
We vigorously oppose
Yes.
California taking our water.
Yes.
Or even Colorado. I know your rose bushes are important to you, but you have. to be
Yes,
careful
I
you
know,
don't
we're
waste too
pigs.
much.
We're pigs. It's true. We're pigs.
don't take our water. So Madam Chair, if you're okay with it, this could probably be our last section. And it's an important one. And
Absolutely.
I think when we finish this, we'll be about halfway through the document. So Sweetwater, so this is on access. This is an important one. Sweetwater County finds that the custom and culture and the economy are closely tied to accessing public lands for resource development and recreation. Physical access via roadways, especially for motorized vehicles, is required for the development and utilization of energy, mineral, recreation areas, or other resources. Of special concern are state inholdings managed by the State Board of Lands and Investments and private lands surrounded by land managed by the Forest Service and BLM. The county believes that access to and across federal lands is critical to the use, management, and development of those lands and adjoining lands. Federal law also assures access to property across federal land. The roads that the county has documented by resolution and map shall remain open. If necessary, the county will apply for Title V right-of-way for these roads in order to preserve use of these roads by motorized vehicle. Any application for a right-of-way does not constitute an admission that such roads are not already public roads.
Connie, just put a parenthesis, see appendix resolution and map. or something.
Okay, yeah, county resolutions.
Sweetwater County will continue to assert and pursue the RS 2477 rights regarding the roads in Sweetwater County, and federal agencies must recognize these access rights. Does everybody understand what RS 2477 is?
No.
Connie,
Connie
you wanna
can,
get- oh,
Connie will do a
okay.
great job, I'm sure.
Well, you can.
No, I have no idea.
So Eric, on 13.2.3,
Yep.
says the roads the county has documented by
Doc-
resolution. Should that say the roads that the county has designated or documented?
That's good.
That's, yep. Connie, can you explain RS 2477?
Sure. I mean, RS 2477 just refers to rights that were established by use when crossing federal land. And it could be something as simple as a sheep herd that, established a route across public land, and that became a public road. And even if it remains only a 2-track, in many states that's recognized as a public road. Wyoming is a little different.
What was the
Wyoming
date?
has a,
What was the date on that, Connie? The RS 2477?
it was 1867,
Oh, wow.
but it expired. It was repealed in 1976.
So it's
so
only
if
those
you-
rows in the middle there.
So if you could show that any road came about by public use before 1976, it was a public road. Wyoming added an additional nuance by saying these roads are roads, but the county must have recognized them at some point in some way, preferably by resolution or designation. Sweetwater County has a map from about 1994 showing an awful lot of roads, and it included the resolution. And you have a more up-to-date resolution addressing this issue, but case like RS 2477 is a federal law that borrows from state law. So what's a road in Wyoming is very different than what's a road in Colorado. So I had to be a little careful when I wrote these to be sure that I reflected Wyoming law, but I didn't result in the county losing a public road simply by, by accident. I want to leave your options open to make the case for a public road down the road. No pun
Connie,
intended.
can you add that to that appendix? Just say, see the appendix, so you can kind of explain that and put the dates in there.
Yes. Yeah, I will.
I don't see it in that conservation district appendix, but I think that's important to explain that.
No, and I do have, we've done a number of memos for different clients about Wyoming's public land law or road law, and there's a lot of history in Sweetwater County, largely because of the checkerboard. So you have some pretty unique history also on this
So
issue.
as far as what to include in an appendix, I could see a map, but the resolutions, I don't know that would be best to have the resolutions all dug up and put into this document. I
Oh, well, there's something like 5 of them, I think, that affect the federal stuff. Are there more?
I think that's something we'll want to bring Gene.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
far as I'm aware, each county road is going to have a resolution.
Oh, yeah, well, we don't want every,
Oh, wow.
Oh,
no.
Yeah, no.
Resolution agreement
It's like,
for
ooh.
federal.
No, if it's every 2-track road, I mean,
well,
yeah.
there is an RS 2477 resolution that's tied to that county map in 1997 or whatever, that one.
But
yeah.
that was
I
geared,
could,
yeah.
I can talk with Mary a little more about it, but I see value for the map and not resolutions. I will
Okay,
talk a little bit more about that with Mary.
no, that's fine. Whatever
afterwards.
you think makes sense.
It's a very popular, RS 247 is a very popular subject if you work in the land use office. They come downstairs.
We should do that one day. How fun.
We have people coming in all the time. Let's talk about RS 2477.
Yeah, you definitely need to put a paragraph in that glossary that's in the conservation, this definition thing.
But if I can just kind of make one quick point on RS 2477, because the checkerboard granted private land to the Union Pacific Railroad, and it goes right through the county. Those lands left the public domain and left eligibility for RS 2477 by 1867 or 1872. I mean, it was
Well,
a long
that
time.
really mucks it up some more. Well,
It does.
good.
It really does make your situation, meaning your situation in Sweetwater County a little more unique than if we're dealing with, say, Moffett County, Colorado, just over the line.
Well, let's just tell Rock Springs Grazing and Sweetwater Royalties that we're going to claim all those roads.
There you go.
Well, I want to keep things real clean, real
Oh,
simple,
yeah.
real general.
The
So-
counties, oh, sorry.
No, keep going.
County supports access to federal lands for all users, including the elderly and the physically impaired. The county opposes the closure of roads, trails, right-of-ways, easements, or other traditional access for the transportation of people, products, recreation, energy, or livestock across federal land. Temporary or permanent closure or abandonment requires full consultation and coordination with the county. County roads on federal lands remain open unless the county takes formal step to close the road. The county supports motorized access to all water related facilities such as dams, reservoirs, delivery systems, monitoring facilities, livestock, water and handling facilities, or other access needed for full enjoyment of proper rights, permits, etc., must be provided. Sweetwater County will support seasonal and wet weather closures so long as they are brief and defined by current weather and road conditions. The county does not support closure of any more Forest Service roads. County supports reopening of the closed Forest Service roads, especially those in the Flaming Gorge National Recreation Area, which remain in use by the public to access camping and fishing sites. And this is, just so you know, the national, we'll be reviewing that. That was separated out from the main national forest. So we will, that process is going to start. So this stuff will be important. The county may,
Although they did adopt a roadless plan, so I'm not sure they're going to touch on that during that
Yeah.
Flaming Gorge plan.
yeah,
So unless they open up the whole inventoried road thing, roadless rule, we might be stuck with some of that.
Well,
I
again,
think that county did work with them though. We can check with Gene. So
and it's
Yep.
down here too. Go ahead.
well, it's anything can be, because this was all agency driven, anything can be reopened.
yeah,
And the access in the Flaming Gorge NRA, I mean, we had an appeal. We did the appeal of that particular decision. And our biggest criticism was that they did not inventory any of the roads they were closing. And they also haven't signed most of the roads that they declared closed. And so it was really, they just said, hey, these are our roads and everything else is closed. But they've never signed them and they didn't actually close them from what I hear from people using the area. And so under road law, they're still kind of open. And if that's the case, as far as I'm concerned, it can be, I don't suggest that you demand reopening of every 2-track road out there. But if there are roads that go to favorite fishing areas, camping areas, whatever, I think those should be reconsidered. Because I do know that the Forest Service did a very quick and dirty job on that plan.
well, and I think that Ranger Rowdy Muir was a local. He just chose not to enforce it because he knew people were using it.
Yeah,
Well, as an avid hunter, you might not have a designated road that takes you to a special fishing hole. It might take you on a ridge on a mountain. So you have to look at all those 2 tracks. It's not just to a designated area.
well,
it's
that
just
was
searching the
exactly
whole
our
area.
point.
Yeah.
I felt pretty strongly about that. I was furious, but the supervisor had completion of this travel plan on his schedule for about 5 or 6 years and hadn't gotten it done. And he just decided he needed it for his bonus and bam, that thing got done. And, and they didn't follow their own policy. They had to do an inventory and they just said, oh, there are just too many roads. We couldn't possibly do that. So I do look to the Flaming Gorge as an opportunity to undo that and to also undo the so-called roadless areas that they classified out there.
Yes.
That's why I wanted Connie to help do this because she's got the history.
Yep.
If we hired some other consultant to help us do a plan, it'd be scary.
Well, we know how important these areas are, especially like South Buckboard and all the roads and OHV opportunities you have down there? You want things starting to get closed off.
No.
We enjoy that. Although the water might go down so far that
Yeah,
it'll expose
anyway,
more roads in
yes.
areas, huh? The county maintains county infrastructure and encourages federal land managers to maintain or contribute towards the maintenance of infrastructure such as structures, bridges, cattle guards to be structurally sound and safe for use. Seawater County supports revision of the inventory of roadless areas or roadless areas within or partially within the county and their future management classification. Sweetwater County supports efforts by the state of Wyoming to petition the Department of Agriculture and Congress to correct the inventory roadless areas in the state. And then access to communicate infrastructure for maintenance, repair, and or upgrade shall be maintained and improved. State and federal agencies shall not reduce or restrict access to communication infrastructure. I think that's a great, look at that.
Except the
Bam,
refuge.
12 o'clock.
Good.
Except the refuge by law, they won't let a power line go through there or anything.
So Madam Chair, let's talk about another workshop before our April.
Just Connie, I have to say, this has been very informative for me. You've done a very good job on this. Thank you.
Yes.
Well, thank you. I had, lots of help. The state of Utah had been funding land use plans for quite some time. And they put them all online. And so I had a lot of good ideas and, kind of knew what the hot button issues were for Sweetwater County. Didn't get them all, but I tried. And again, I want to give you enough flexibility that the document will be not only a living document, but that can fit a lot of situations we're not thinking about today.
Well, thanks again, Connie. I know we put you under the gun with the scheduling.
Schedules, yeah. But thank you.
She was working on until very late last night because yesterday gave her the next ultimatum that you've got to cut it in half because we just want a paragraph belief statement. We don't want 25 sentences. So can you whack it together again?
Yeah.
So you did a great job, Connie.
Yes,
Just
thank you so
really
much.
Well,
appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you.
So just because we have to advertise in the local paper,
Oh,
so I don't know how everyone, when is spring break? Does anybody know schools? Does that affect anybody here? Because
Me.
Spring break.
Should I go make copies? of that?
Yes, thank you.
Because
Spring break is the 21st to
Connie made a schedule
23rd.
going back. So we
Okay.
can do the Administrative Procedures Act,
I
the
think
25-day
I'm still
public
around.
process from July 1, so we can get paid
Yeah.
for doing this.
We'll probably not be here the 28th through the 1st though of March.
okay.
I'm here in South Dakota. Possibly go to it if it goes that far.
How is the week for the 21st? So you can't make the 21st then through that week, the week of the 21st?
I could. the
Okay.
21st, yes.
How about everybody else?
Yep.
I'm good. Yeah, I'll be here.
Connie, week of the 21st?
21 is good. I'm probably going to be on a plane on the 23rd. But otherwise I can manage.
Oh,
I
that's
can
no,
work
because I'm
around
busy
it.
on the 23rd. I couldn't do the 23rd anyway. So that
Okay.
works for me too. What day works better? Mary,
Monday, we have a budget workshop.
the 21st?
Yeah, the 22nd, I think we're open. The 23rd, we're open. The 24th, we have Castle Rock and the 3 to 6.
Budget workshops at 4 on the 21st.
So we could do it in the morning on the 21st.
Morning. Yeah.
Yeah, that works.
Works for me.
Okay.
10 o'clock?
Perfect.
Okay, we'll advertise it. March 21st.
Well, I have to tell you, I did try
No, we don't have time
No.
for that. There's no time.
No.
No.
So I really appreciate that you have been so willing to jump into this in such short notice.
At 10 p.m. I mean, 10 a.m.
Oh, we can do 10 p.m.
Yeah.
Let's not.
No, it's not. 10 a.m. Yes.
Okay, the 21st at 10 a.m. We will reconvene.
Okay. All right.
All right.